Hey, what's up everybody? It's Dave here, Sans Everything. Welcome back to the channel. As you can tell, my toque and my hoodie, it is fall now, and actually the video you're going to be watching today, I filmed a couple months back. In my last video, I mentioned that I had some problems with filming video. I lost some of the footage for this video originally, and I was only able to save the GoPro previews, so bear with me for the first 5 minutes of this video. The video quality and audio quality is not great. But it was the best I could do to save this video. I promise you, if you bear with the very beginning, things are going to get a lot better and we're going to finish this out. But enjoy what's following this, and I'll see you at the end because I'm going to film the outro to this video right after this one. Back inside the struggle bus, and the struggle bus is my garage. It's Dave here, Sense Everything, and we're going to continue working on my transmission tunnel that I started in the last video. So go ahead and watch that one if you have not, and you can see how this was probably one of the harder things I've done in the garage, and I don't really know why. It's just I couldn't think it through, but I have something to start with now. So this is where we left off in the last video. We've got the base plate here, and then we've got the tunnel portion up here. I want to basically build a piece that flanges off of here to kind of line this up, give me a spot to mount this, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And it's just going to be the same gauge sheet metal. I'm kind of thinking, you know, something like this that just kind of goes in there. This piece isn't the correct one to go here. I'm going to have to do some massaging and figure that out. But I think it'll work out really well and give me a nice flange. And if I spot weld it from the inside, it won't look like two pieces really, especially once I get this coated and seam sealed and all that. So I am going to use Bristol board to template that all out. Because I showed a lot of Bristol board templating in my last video, I'm just going to bring you back when this is done. And then I'll talk through transferring it to metal and then spot welding it onto this. And hopefully we can get that done tonight. And before I spot weld it on, actually, I'm probably going to weld through primer everything and then spot weld it back on. And then, you know, continue with the rest of the video welding this. I have decided that I'm going to try and weld this in its entirety. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that and hopefully bolt this down so that it doesn't warp. But first, let's start with making these flanges out of Bristol board, and then we'll transfer them to some metal. I've got a lot of this 22 gauge kicking around, so that shouldn't be a problem. So I will see you in the next cut where I've at least made some of this out of Bristol board. Around with some Bristol board again, and let me show you what I've got going on. So I have put some flanges sort of on the ends of my transmission tunnel now. You can see one on that side and one on this side, and then it actually breaks and it's going to attach here with some spot welds from the inside. This is all pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this sort of cardboard that I've got going on here. It does clear the gas pedal over there. I have a little bit to notch off of there, not too much, and I think it'll really give me some options for how I'm going to mount this. I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to attach it. I'm sort of torn between, I don't really want to drill through my firewall. So I'm wondering if maybe I can use some Velcro or just something to just kind of keep this in place. But I definitely think having some metal here will definitely help out. And it does definitely clean up sort of that intersection there. We're going to have a nice good seal. So I'm all stoked on how this looks. So let me take this out of the truck where it's a little bit less echoey and kind of show you what I've got going on. Now that everything's out of the truck, you can see what I'm going to end up doing here. So I've got this inner flange that goes in here. I'm going to put a couple spot welds in there, keep that nice and tight, and then it breaks here, and that's where sort of this intersects. I will weld that up as well. And this is what the piece for the driver's side looks like, sort of off the truck. So it's a bit of a funky looking piece, all said and done. There's a break in it, and then it just kind of fits in right here. Again, a few spot welds from the inside. It's going to be money, and it's really going to help sort of mount this thing and just kind of tie it all together. And then once it's all painted up, you're not even really going to notice it. So I'm going to cut these two pieces out, bend them up, and then maybe I probably cut to me just welding it in and doing all that stuff. But I'll put the camera somewhere so that you can watch me sort of make these two pieces, and then we'll come back to sort of getting it all ready to be welded in. I'm going to have to spray this with some weld-through primer, so I actually don't know if we'll be doing it tonight, but we'll see. so I'm going to show you what it looks like now. So moving into the truck now, you can see that I've got a nice flange in here. It'll come up. Here's the gas pedal nicely with a lot of movement for if I'm moving the trans tunnel around a little bit as I'm final mounting it. I'm going to clearance this out just a tiny bit more. This side is looking nice, you know what I mean? I'm going to be able to weld this down here. Of course, after I've sort of finessed it, got it in, but my plan is from the inside to drill this piece, which I'll just pull out here, just tack it to the inside here. And then once it's in, I can finesse this a little bit if I need to, but I'm pretty happy with how it's looking. So my next step is going to be to hit this all with weld-through primer, and then we can get it welded. Before I do that, I do want to mark these holes here. I'm just going to center punch them, just because when I go over it with the weld-through primer, you're not going to be able to see that anymore. I'm actually going to clean up all the Sharpie lines before I do that, and then I'm going to hit it with weld-through primer. So the last part of the video tonight is probably just going to be me putting it on the bench and spraying everything down with weld-through, and then we'll come back probably tomorrow, tack everything in, and then start the process of welding it all around. And then maybe we'll get this undercoated for this video, and then that'll be a wrap on the trans tunnel. All right, everything is hit with weld-through primer now. So, you know, I just did kind of where I'm going to be welding it all. That's where I hit with the weld-through primer. And then this is all hit with weld-through now. So the next step is going to be putting a couple holes in this for the spot welds, and then spot welding these into place. And then I'll just make sure that everything is fitting up nicely how I want it to after I spot weld it. And then we'll go through and weld all this down. And that'll probably be what I'm doing today. But, you know, if I get everything welded in and fit nicely and it's not too late, maybe I'll crank some seam sealer on it, and then we'll really call it a day. And in the next video, it'll be primer and undercoating, and we can knock this one off once I actually drill some holes to mount everything. So yeah, there's a couple things left to do. So there's nothing to it but to do it, so let's get after it. Alright, so I've gone ahead and I've drilled some spots for some spot welds. I might have gone a bit overboard, but I might as well just over attach it than under attach it. But to make sure that I have everything kind of fitting the way that I like it to, I'm going to do one spot weld first and then pop it in the truck and make sure that this side is good, and then we'll continue with this side. And then once I'm sure that everything's cool, I'll kind of open this up and be able to weld this area too, and it'll be nice and it'll look consistent. But I want to do that after I just make sure that this brake is correct how I want it to be, and just that everything's fitting nicely. And just make sure that everything's fitting nicely as one unit. So let me tack this in, we'll put it in the truck, and then hopefully everything is working how I want it to. Alright, I put a few spot welds into both of those flanges, so let's see how they look in the truck. So everything lined up pretty much exactly how I wanted it to. It looks pretty good. I'm going to be able to figure out how I'm going to mount this. Like I said, I'm not sure what I'm going to use. I kind of think if I have, you know, bolts running down the bottom there, maybe just against the firewall I can use some sort of heavy duty Velcro or something, just so I don't have to drill through my firewall. My only concern would be if it'll stick to this undercoating, which I think some will, especially if I do it where it's flat here. But then I got to worry about the heat melting the glue that attaches it. But you know, there's some Velcro that'll hold, you know, up to 25 pounds, and this isn't popping up. So maybe that'll be the thing, or maybe, you know, if I just bolt this down here, it'll create enough seal up here, and I don't really have to worry about it. So I'm definitely going to start by mounting it down here once I think everything is ready to go, and then we'll kind of go from there. So my next steps are going to be, I'm going to spot weld everything into place, then worry about these transitions down at the bottom. So for this, I'll definitely set up the camera, and you guys can watch me do some spot welds, and then we'll be back next cut and see how everything's progressing. Is pretty much together now, but I've got some welding that I want to do to make it a little bit better and use a little bit less seam sealer, and just so that I don't warp it, I've clamped it down to this pretty thick piece of metal here to work as a heat sink. And you can see that I've used a bunch of clamps, pieces of metal where I couldn't reach because of the clamps. I didn't really want to cut this down. And I'm just going to go through, and I'm going to go in small portions. So I'll do like this space here, and then maybe I'll switch up to that space up there, and just keep working my way around so that I don't warp this. So I'm going to test run it tonight. I'm running out of steam a little bit. I'll test run it, see how it works. Probably weld like 2 bits tonight, and then come out another night and totally get this thing welded out together. And you know, having it on this metal is much better than doing all of this welding on my wooden bench here. So let's just get into it and see how it goes. Back and I've done a bunch of work. So the transmission tunnel is no longer on the bench. I have since finished welding it up, and you can see the welds aren't the greatest. Sheet metal is still a little bit challenging at this thin gauge for me, but I've trimmed everything up. I notched around here a little bit more, kind of did a little bit around there. You can see that I did get a bit of a warp, but once I bolt it down, that'll be fine. Especially once I add a seal to it. I'm not really too concerned about that. So the next step for me is going to be to prime this entire thing and start hitting it with some undercoating. So to prime it, we're going to go over to this bench. I'm going to kind of make a little bit of a paint booth. We'll prime it up. I've got the rocker guard that I'm going to hit the top side and part of the underside with. I'll also show you the underside sort of once everything's all done. But before I get to the rubberized undercoating, I am going to seam seal it after I put some primer on it. So let me get sort of my workspace together, then I'll show you the materials I'm going to use, and then we'll kind of go through the process of getting this ready to bolt into the truck. Okay, I've assembled the usual suspects for coating my floor or anything that I want to coat just to be protected from rust. So the base coat is going to be hopefully this Powerface Sandables primer. It has been spraying like absolute crap lately, so we'll see if that works. I'm going to do the top side and hopefully the underside. You know, I've got some weld through primer on here. You can see that it just scratches off really easily. That stuff will go on a lot better. And then I am going to use seam sealer on all of the joints. That is going to be true of the top and the bottom. And then finally what I'm going to do is use some rubberized undercoating on most of it. Or I'm going to use either some of this black Tremclad on the other side, because I'm going to be careful not to do kind of the edges of the bottom side where I do want to attach a seal at some point. I just know that it's not really going to stick to the undercoating very well. And if I run out of this paint, I've got this Armor Coat stuff. It's not black, but I really need to use this color up. I don't even know what I bought it for. And I think it'll be fine sort of underneath the truck where you won't see it, and just save me from going out and buying some materials. I have tons of paint from other projects that I like to use up just because otherwise it goes to waste, and paint is not very cheap. So yeah, just because of where this is positioned, I don't know if I'm going to put the camera somewhere to show me priming it, but I'll definitely show seam sealing and undercoating it. Alright, so we're on another day, and I have painted this with primer, and it certainly highlights how bad some of these welds are, but don't worry about that. It does hold. It is pretty good for what it's going to be. Yeah, it's pretty gnarly down in there. That's where I had a big gap. But I've taped everything off, and originally I was only going to tack this and then put seam sealer. I think now that I've got it mostly welded, whatever you want to call those welds, and then seam sealer, it's going to be a lot better. So the next step is going to be to use this seam sealer and put it all around there. I've taped this just so I can get some nice clean lines. I am going to do across, down, across, up, and then down there as well. And then I'm going to flip it over and do some seam sealer on the opposite side just to make sure that this is as sealed as possible. And then when I do add some rubber sealer or foam or something to the top, that'll seal against the firewall, and that'll keep out a lot of noise and, you know, emissions, water, all that good stuff. So, and then after I have the camera over there somewhere, you can see how I do this, and then we'll flip it over and we'll just keep it rolling. Okay, I finished my finger painting for the night, and I'm going to show you what it looks like. You can see that using the masking tape to keep the lines pretty clean. I got a little bit funky up here. I took the tape off a little bit early, but the rest of it sorted out pretty well, especially for what it is, and considering I'm going to hit it with undercoating, I'm pretty happy with it. The other side I did do freehand, so I'll show you that maybe once it's dry. I just don't want to flip it over, get a bunch of the stuff on my hands. Should have worn my gloves the whole time, but whatever. So the next step is actually going to be waiting for this to dry. It takes about half an hour before you can go over it with paint. And then I'm going to go over the top side of it with this and the bottom side with the Trem Clad. I just have to make sure to mask a couple of things off on the reverse side because I want to go over the bottom side with probably Trem Clad at the very least, but probably some rocker guard. But again, I want to keep the edges free so when I do my seals. But I'm also running on a masking tape, so we'll see just how far I get. Maybe this video ends with just the top side done, but I do think that's pretty good progress. We really banged this one out, and we can soon check it off the list over there. So I'll come back when this is dry and we'll see how it's going. Okay, we're back out in the garage. I had some camera problems yesterday, so I don't know for sure if the footage of me painting the cover turned out. But if it didn't, I'm just going to show you what it looks like in the truck and then talk about what we're going to do next. So the cover's in the truck now, obviously. You can see that the black looks a lot better than that black. I mean, this has been through a body shop. It's been kicking around for a while since I painted it. So it makes sense that this black, which is fresh, just looks a lot better. But everything is in here and looking pretty good right now. You can see that around here and around here, it is pretty tight to the firewall. But then right here, there is a pretty big gap. I've already been looking at some seals that I can use that kind of go on the edge of here or mount to the bottom that can kind of fill in some of that. But I do think I'm going to have to get a little bit creative. But because of the way that the floor is, I don't really think I would have been able to kind of build tighter to that unless I angled up and went straight up into here, which would have made it a little bit complicated up in that area. And again, I think I would have just been left with some weirdness. So I'm okay with that right now. I also think that when I put some bolts in here, this area I'm not going to have to worry about too much, but I will still try and put a seal on that as well, just again to try and keep out as many fumes and water and all that jazz as is humanly possible. What I'm going to do next though is figure out where I'm going to put these holes, and then hopefully I can drill and tap them rather than having a nut and bolt, only because I don't really want to have to crawl under the truck anytime I do need to remove this. This material under here is pretty thick, so I think it should work, but you never know. So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to put some tape where I think these holes are going to be, mark them, make sure there's nothing underneath that I'm going to interfere with, and then find some hardware. Hopefully I got some hardware in here. Drill and tap it, bolt it down, and then we'll probably call this done for the video. I do have to paint the underside of this, so maybe there'll be a little bit of a clip of me painting the underside of this cover, but for now, you know, I'm pretty happy with how it looks. It's all sealed. It's not going to rust or get too much damage from all the abuse that it's going to get being in the middle of the truck. But I do also have to get a picture of it with me in the driver's seat. So let's get this bolted down and then we'll kind of wrap this video up. Okay, so after all of that, we are in the truck now. I have the transmission tunnel installed. You can see that I've got all my bolts in. You can see that I've got 6 bolts of the kind of set in right now. I do still have to put some weather stripping up there. I did end up finding sort of this weather stripping. I'm not sure what it's from, but I think it'll work really nicely to tuck into this gap here. I think it'll work really nicely to tuck into this gap here, but honestly, I am pretty stoked with how it worked out. Let me hop into the driver's seat and we'll give this a couple of presses and I'll just show you just how well it is working out. Okay, so hopping into the driver's seat, you can see that it looks pretty good. Again, it is a little bit off center, and that is to clear the driver's pedal. I can put my foot to the floor, no problem. It's not nearly as bad as I thought it would be, and it's actually pretty comfortable. Pretty happy with how it worked out. Again, you can see that the finish is different from here and there. That's just, you know, that's old, that's new. But I'm pretty stoked on how this turned out, especially for my first transmission tunnel. And then once I end up figuring out what I'm going to do, either rubber mat or carpet, you're hardly going to see it, and it's going to serve its purpose. We're going to call this video a wrap. Thanks again for watching this one and bearing with me. But actually, before we call this video a wrap, I am going to show you a sneak peek of what we've got coming up next. So I have knocked a few more things off my list, including mounting my bed. Now, things are not perfect yet. We're getting there. I'm moving things along, trying to figure things out. But the most important thing is that my bed is on. Now, that is just a teaser, and this is also just a teaser. Things are really progressing here, and I hope to have the next video showing you my bed and fitting my wheels and just a little bit more on how things are shaping up. I'm going to keep working on this passenger side wheel fitment right now, and the next video I will replicate it on that side. Again, I have some time now. I really need to figure out my camera situation before I film the next video. That's why I'm not doing it tonight, but we are going to get there. So thanks again for watching. Thank you very much for bearing with me while I deal with these technical difficulties, and we will 100% catch you in the next video. Once again, give me a like and a share and a subscribe if you're new to the channel. I'm going to keep cranking away on this truck. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.